Buon pomeriggio, benvenuti ancora alla Milano Music Week. Io sono Lodovico Benvenuti, direttore europeo di IFPI, e oggi modererò un panel in inglese, quindi adesso I will switch to English, on European Agenda for Music, how European policies influence the recording industry. So, I will start with a presentation and then we'll give the floor to our speakers, panelists, which are Enzo Mazza from FIMI, Francesca Trainini from IMPALA, René Houareau from BVMI, German Association of Recording Industry, Antonio Guisasola from Promusicae, Spain, and Lasch from SNEP, French Association of Recording Industry. So let me start with my presentation, which is Music in the EU, a Global Opportunity. Let me first start about giving you a few information about IFPI. IFPI, as you probably know, is the international organization representing the recording industry. We represent beyond the three major labels, Sony Music, Universal Music, and Warner Music, other 8,000 independent labels across the world. This is done directly or through our network of national groups. We have regional offices in every continent, and our headquarters is in London. So, one of the key activities of IFPI is to be the global hub of data for the recording industry. And, but nevertheless, my concern as European Director is that there was never any specific attention to not the European region, because in the past we would treat the data only as a European region, but nothing about the EU, so European Union, because you all know that the European Union is not the whole European region. There comes the idea of having, for the first time, a report on the EU, specific on the EU. What is the objective of such a report? Is to have a focus which is relevant also to policymakers to understand better the EU market, the consistencies and the divergences inside the EU market in order to take better policy decisions. Because data, this is what they are for. They just give information about the market to the market players, but also to those who create the rules that are relevant to our industry. So, what does this report tells us? Is that the EU is still one of the key markets in the world. Is the second market in the world after the US. You can see that we are still well behind the US market, which has always been the leading market for our sector. Also, in terms of growth, the EU recently has been doing quite well, so with a quite solid plus 8.7% growth. This, among the major markets, has been the best performance. This is about last year, 2023. Nevertheless, if we look at the long-term picture, these data are less exciting because the EU, compared to 2001, is still at 61% than where it was. And if you compare with the other markets, such as the leading markets, US especially, it's much below where it should be, being the US now at 80%. Of what they were in 2001. The European market has nevertheless very different rhythms of growth. And this is very much also related to the level of penetration of pay streaming. So You have markets in which you have more to catch up with in terms of pay streaming, and which are normally growing more. Here, it's nice for me as an Italian to salute the fact that Italy, among the markets, the bigger and mature market, has been the country, the market growing more. What's very good about the European market is, and it has been said a lot also by Carlo Conti today, is the success of local repertoires. Italy being again one of the best performing markets on this, where you have streaming despite what people might think, streaming has been a great advantage, a great platform for the success of local markets, for the localization of markets. And as I said, Italy is a success story on this. But this is a quite spread, and we will discuss it later, quite spread phenomenon, with Spain being a little bit different, but because of Spanish, because there is a different dimension that Antonio will tell us about later. So, if we look at the local artists, the EU is doing much better than the rest of the world. So, where it's 60% of average of domestic artists in 2023 who are in the top 10 charts. Where Europe is doing a little bit less well, but this is again a data that we will be studying more because this is very relevant also for policymakers, is in exporting. So we have strong domestic markets, but less an ability to be on the top chart of creating global artists which are successful at global level. In our view, this is a missed opportunity for the industry, a missed opportunity for the countries, because we lose a big tool in terms of soft power. For this, we are looking very much at what happened, for example, in Korea and in some Asian markets and LATAM, where having proactive policies, here I'm talking about Korea, supporting local content has proven to be a great advantage for the whole economy and for the whole image of the country. Why is this important? Why is it important for the recording industry to perform well? Because if we look, this is a study that we have done a couple of years ago. If we look at the impact it has on the overall economy, €1 invested in a recording company makes 1.8 euros of output. That's an amazing data, and this is something that policymakers tend to forget, that investing in the recording industry, investing in the creative sector is an incredible economic driver overall. And that comes very relevant when you discuss about technology and where you have the tendency to consider that growth only comes from technology industry while we are doing our part as well. So, what are the challenges facing the EU music sector? Again, slower revenue growth than other markets globally. Still piracy, it's the elephant in the room. People tend to forget because it's less relevant and less problematic than it was 10 years ago, but still is a big problem. And then, I haven't mentioned it yet, but you know it very well because it has been discussed a lot, AI and deep fakes. So what are we asking to policymakers on this? First of all, and I think that I will focus on this, and then you can read the rest, is that ensure full and correct implementation of EU rules, IP rules. The problem of the EU, there is a lot of debate about this, is not making new rules, but is just implementing and apply those that have been approved. Because we have the tendency to say that the EU over-regulates, might be true, but certainly what the EU does, it does not fully implement the rules that are approved. Then, and then another aspect is strengthen the digital market. And how do you do this? You do it by preempting national initiative that is fragmenting the digital single market. I always take as an example the streaming tax in France. So these initiatives which are born in one country, and then they are not coordinated at EU level, and they create an element of uncertainty which is detrimental to ability of international investors to invest in Europe. And then allow freedom for artists and record labels to operate across EU borders, and support enforcement measures for a fair and competitive music market. Again, coming back on AI, I have two aspects, you can read the rest, two aspects which are absolutely crucial, recognizing that also on the AI world, there needs to be an authorization and a respect of copyright. And there's no difference for AI compared to the online world. And secondly, again, coming back to the full implementation of the EU regulation, making the recently adopted AI Act meaningfully implemented by applying properly the transparency requirements, because you cannot enforce copyright, you cannot make sure that artists are paid if you don't know which content is used to train artificial intelligence. How do you know it? By imposing these players to provide all the information about the content they have used. So, I come to an end. This is the overview of the European music market. Europe has a rich history and is a great player in the global music market. The labels are there to help this being the case, to help the growth, and we need to make the European market more competitive and compared to other regions that are growing more, and to do that we need to have a consistent and effective application of the EU rules. Thank you very much, and now it's time for me to pass the floor to Francesca. Francesca, you are president of IMPALA, so the organization which in Europe represents the interest of the independent labels, and I think it's fair to give you the floor to give your perspective on things.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very honored to be here amongst you. IMPALA is the label association of independent labels that doesn't necessarily represent only the EU labels, but we actually go across the spectrum of the European geographical region. So we reach out to Eastern countries. We have members from Turkey, and so we're not limited to the scope of your report, but you know, it's that's besides the point, because we obviously have started as an organization with deep roots in the EU. The founding members were all from EU territories. We represent 4,000 labels, and they are, as I say, from the geographical Europe rather than the EU. Some of them are the most representative independent labels from our continent. One of the things that I would like to underline, which I found in your report and which is very interesting in my opinion, is that the report says that artists don't need so much labels anymore, and you know, they can do this by themselves. I think we are very strongly of the opinion that labels do have an important role, that without labels, artists would be really missing their point, or not getting as much from their career as they are supposed to. Going back to the main point of your report, we absolutely agree on the necessity of actually enforcing the regulations that the EU have put in place. I'm really pleased when I speak to our colleagues in the US or in other countries, because they always compliment the EU on the kind of regulations that they actually produce. It's a very strong regulation, it's very balanced. As you said though, Lodovico, one thing is to have regulations and a different thing is to enforce them. And you know, that is something that we keep reminding the institutions at every single opportunity we have. On AI, we have been working very hard because, of course, we don't want to be in a position on the back foot, you know, of this evolution, which is, well, gone, you know, it's in place. We need to really try and open a table, as far as I'm concerned, and that's also the opinion of the board of IMPALA at large, open a table of discussion with these technological companies because they are simply playing for time. They hope, and I've heard this in more than one occasion, and in one case it's actually on a podcast, which I keep playing to people at every opportunity. What they are thinking is, if we sort of hang on long enough, we might get away with it. You know, so that's really very urgent that we actually bring them to the table, discuss it in a fair way. It's an evolution that we cannot stop. We can benefit from it because that's been proved by, you know, other occurrences in the past. You know, when digital came along, we were very resilient to embrace it, and then it changed our lives for good, as you showed in your figures, although we're not back to where we were, but you know, we still have to take into account the evolution of the economies and what has happened in the meantime.
Thank you very much, Francesca. So it's very interesting. I have also the anecdote of the Americans say, yeah, in Europe you do great laws, but then what happens with it?
Yes.
And that's sort of destabilizing the credibility of the European Union as a legislation.
We must work we must work to stop that. It's not just the Americans. I mean, you know, I know India is actually taking the AI Act and basically copying and pasting it, which is very, you know, I'm very glad that that's happening, because it means that we are putting into law some very deep thought and some very balanced ideas, but still, you know, they need to work here. They need to help us.
So I will now move, thank you very much, Francesca. I will now move to one of the two of the Franco-German couple. So shall I start with Alex? So just give us a little bit a description of where you are in France as a market, as a place to be a recording industry.
Sure, thank you Lodovico, and grazie alla FIMI per l'invito. I have my cheat notes, sorry about that, but at the market, France shares many similarities with other countries for sure. First, streaming now accounts for 3/4 of revenues, largely driven by subscription. Also, as you said, Lodovico, the power of the local scene is particularly great in France. This has always been the case, in particular because of the quota system for French songs on the radio, but it is growing stronger, and I would say organically with the development of the streaming market, to the benefit of the rap music, for sure, because it is very present in the very top of the charts, but not only, also to the benefit of all repertoires. Of the 100,000 most listened to tracks in France last year, nearly 2/3 were actually produced in France and or developed by French teams. And on the other hand, we also have some particularities within our markets, because we are not quite at the same point in terms of development. And you mentioned it in your presentation. the subscription penetration rate is not everywhere the same. It is quite low in France, and for a long time we saw this as in a positive manner, I would say, as a large room for improvement. But now we also have to admit that it's not only that, despite a growing market, we are not catching up. There are many factors that could explain this. For instance, competition between the various cultural offerings and the audiovisual sector, for instance, that is probably greater than elsewhere, with strong local players such as Canal Plus or TF1. That makes consumers' arbitration even more difficult, probably in France. But what's more, public authorities are not sufficiently supportive of our efforts to develop the market. And once again, you mentioned it, in particular with the streaming tax. As you are no doubt aware, the French government last year has introduced a tax on streaming platforms that particularly affect the most virtual players, such as Spotify, Deezer, Cobuzz, which is a French platform, meaning the subscription services, basically. And we can now clearly see how bad an idea it was and still is, because the platforms have since reduced their investment in marketing in France. They have also, for certain of them, increased their tariffs. That's the case for Spotify, in order to cover the cost associated with this tax. All this makes it even more challenging for us to develop the market. And paradoxically, the proceeds of this tax does not have the redistributive effect that the government was hoping it would have. So yes, despite our particularities, I believe everywhere we face the same challenge, growing the market, as you said, and for the benefit of the entire value chain, clearly. To put it simply, if we double the number of subscribers, then we double the revenues of performers, of publishers, of authors, and of record labels, of course. And doing so, we contribute largely to enhance the diversity of our ecosystem. So this should be a priority for all decision makers across Europe.
Absolutely. So, thank you, Alex. So what's about the other leg of the European integration?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Well, in Germany, I can tell you we have a market last year as of 2.2 billion. Next year it will be around 2.3 billion, and we come from the peak from 2.8 billion. So among the piracy and download piracy phase, we lost 40% of the market and have grown so far. This is good. We do love European legislation as a music industry. Why? Because, and we do like the acts more than the directives. All of you will know that there's two kind of different law sets. The act is basically the single state cannot do anything anymore. The directive they can implement. They have to implement. But in Germany, sometimes politics sits there and says, yeah, directive, good idea, but let's do it differently. And then we sit there and have to kind of rearrange. And this is not always in favor of the market. It doesn't help the market grow. So that's this issue perhaps interesting for discussion. We have an around 80% market of streaming revenue. That's the biggest chunk. We still have vinyl. Vinyl is growing, by the way, by I think 14% a year or so. It's quite a cool thing. And by the way, fun fact, the youngsters are buying vinyl. It's between 11 and 19 or so that they're buying the most vinyl right now. Another thing maybe interesting is the export issue we discussed in this round. Which one of you has listened to a German song lately? I don't know. We do not export much. We do import a lot from France, Italy, and Spain. German export, not so much. locally on ground, and that's, I come from BVMI, basically the major federation, but we do have 180 members, so also a lot of small members. And the three biggest ones, Sony, Universal, and Warner Music, and BMG. But all of them, be it small or big, they do want local repertoire to thrive. They want to invest in local repertoire, and they do. And it's on Spotify and all of the other DSPs, we have around, I would say, let's say 80% local repertoire, and it's growing. On the radio, on the other hand, we do have, especially on the public broadcasters in Germany, we have a big problem, and we discuss it with them. Why are you playing all of this US material? Because we kind of see that the listener wants local repertoire. And so far, discussions been ongoing for like, I think 15 years or so, and we expect an answer soon.
Which is a paradox, because public service broadcasters should sort of be a public service, so serve more the local interest, the local content.
Yeah, exactly. But they are very, and we do have discussions and working groups. The company heads are now saying at some point, but is it still worth having those discussions? Because we're all kind of wasting time. And I don't know if you know that the public broadcasters in Germany are funded with 9 billion per year. So even the public kind of expects to see and to have their own content they do want on there. But it's an ongoing discussion, perhaps nice for the round. Yeah.
No, it's good to know and to compare maybe with other countries. Antonio, well, we have seen this data, which was sort of this 40% on Spanish local content compared to the 70-90% of other countries. There, obviously, there is a pretty specific factor, is that Spain is a European platform towards half of a continent. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I like to say that Spain is the new UK, in the sense that you are our platform to the Atlantic. So I see it more as an asset, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. Grazie Enzo and grazie Lodo for this. And yes, we were used in the 90s or even in the early 2000s to be a highway to Latin America and the United States. The problem is that in the last years, I think the highway reveals that there are two ways of going for it, and we are receiving more than we are sending there. So the good news is that I think the Spanish is the language of the new pop. I think it is a truth that people in the past should react against a song in the Spanish, prefer something in English. But now they are used to listen to music in Spanish, and they feel that it's as good as the English was. So this new urban pop with Latin rhythms, I think, has been consolidated as a new style of music. The problem is that we are 49 million inhabitants, and we are competing against 500 million of people speaking in Spanish, the biggest colony in the United States. So we are receiving a lot of pressure from that. And for that reason, I think we need some help from the authorities to promote the local investments, I would say. So we have a lot of competition from Colombia, from Puerto Rico, from Miami, because these are countries that invest a lot in the music industry and give a lot of aid to that industry. And especially in Spain, I think as a consequence of the high level of piracy that we have in the past and the lack of interest of some governments, the music industry is coming behind other industries. We are seeing a lot of support to the film industry, to the book. The publishers in Spain are a very, very strong industry, but the music is a bit forbidden. So I think that we should try to get some more help from the European institutions and the local ones to promote exportation and to try to defend what we are doing in Spain and we are doing in Europe. So the big companies are creating big studios in Madrid to try to compete with the big ones we have in Miami. and to try to bring the Latin artists to Madrid, because instead of having the Spanish one going there, because they say, well, if I go to Madrid, I am 2 hours distance from Brussels, Berlin, Paris, wherever. So they are starting to introduce Madrid as an entrance, but we need to try to attract also the investment that is made more in Miami or Puerto Rico than in Spain. And I think the European Union should have a look at this.
Yeah, well, before I give the floor to Enzo, because I would like to comment that the kind of initiatives such as the Milano Music Week, and I'm sure you have the same initiatives, I know you have the same initiative, different kind of, but same initiative at national level, is to remind the immense value of the music industry for the overall economy. I think that as a sector we need to do more to explain this and to give a proper understanding from policymakers that we are not just less relevant and less potentially important for growth than other sectors. So, Enzo, what's the situation in Italy? Is all good or we can improve?
Well, so good so far. Yeah, the last 9 months were still positive. We recently collected the numbers for the Q3, and we saw still a growth around 15% as the entire market, driven by subscription streaming, which grew 21%. And that means Italy is still running fast, and there are some opportunities that we can see, in particular because Italy lagged behind for many years in the streaming subscription penetration. We have around between 5-6 million subscribers in the country to music platform, and it's absolutely less than other countries in Europe. So you look in that terms, I think we are going to look to Italy as a less developed country for streaming. So on the other side is an opportunity, because we know that we can reach more and more subscribers in the future. That because the penetration, for example, in the mobile sector, the young generation are using more and more the smartphones to listen to music, and the local repertoire, which is quite strong, as in other countries, but in particular here is growing fast with an entire new generation of artists. There was a shift between 10 years ago. Now we have 30% an average age less than we have 10 years ago. So it means that there are a lot of opportunities to increase the market, to reach numbers that are comparable to other countries. I have always a benchmark that is strange. For example, Mexico. Mexico is a big market. It was at the same level of Italy during the physical market. We were fighting between the two markets, Mexico and Italy. Now they are far beyond us, and it was an incredible increase in Mexico compared to Italy. Mexico has a big local repertoire, very strong. So, but they have a big piracy at that time, as you remember. Piracy in Mexico was higher than Italy. So they have developed an offer that has, on one side, a response to the illegal use of music. We did the same in a way that piracy was reduced a lot. Today, piracy is mostly about football matches and live streaming events in Italy, but it's quite low in music. But there are still problems to convert the users from free streaming, so piracy has been replaced by people listening to music through YouTube, to Spotify Free, or even to TikTok. And that is affecting the number of people who are securing a subscription, a legal subscription, and a pay tier. So that's the point. And we see that shows some good opportunity, because the music in Italy is consumed in a very high way. So there is an entire generation of people listening to music, but less subscription as we expect to have. And this is turning into some limits, because if the market remain quite small compared to France, compared to Germany in particular, the investment that company can make on local repertoire are obviously less relevant. In particular, because the investment on local repertoire is the cost of local repertoire is growing. Contracts are higher than in the physical era, with the turnover that is not the same. So we pay a lot for new talents. The companies are fighting to get new talents, so they offer very good contract. But this is not turning into the level of revenue that we get in the past. So the only chance is look abroad. So export. Export is probably one of the main interesting area to explore. So that's the situation, apart from other issues that we can talk later. But the perspective is trying to convert more the consumer on streaming and use the international platform Spotify recently, during the opening event, told about 60 million listeners of Italian music abroad, in the world. Listening to Italian music, they have listened to at least one track of Italian music, or they have added a track of Italian music on a playlist. So it's a great opportunity. We'll look into this as a potential opportunity, but it's a big fight, as you can imagine.
Thank you very much, Enzo. I quote the CEO of UMG, your CEO, the Italian CEO of UMG, Mazza, who said that the wish for next year is to have more subscriptions. So that's, I think, the effort in Europe. There is no country apart from the Nordics which has reached the level where it should be. So that's certainly the first objective for the industry, because, as a reminder, subscriptions means bigger cake, and therefore more money, more resources, more revenues for everybody, for all the value chain, for all the ecosystem, more investments for content, and so forth. So a virtuous circle. But here we have been discussing about streaming because this is the world as it is now. Obviously, we have this sort of question mark beyond the corner, which is what happens with AI. And we are all very busy to just find out what happens and to make sure that the regulatory framework is fit for purpose and help us making this an opportunity rather than a negative disruption. So a positive disruption and not a negative disruption. The core, the center of this discussion, besides Brussels, is Paris. We know that you like to have this kind of debates, and so I will ask Alex to just give us a little bit an update of where you are, because there are plenty of discussions and dynamics happening there.
Yes, you're right. I would be happy to avoid to have so much debate about that in France, because generally speaking, it's not discussed in the good manner, because for the first time in our history, we had to fight against our own government during the AI negotiations, because for the first time, France was not supportive of copyright. And, well, basically, France tried to kill the AI Act, because there was the government was of the idea that this text would mean more obligations for the AI sector. And doing so, they opposed culture and innovation in a way that is absolutely sterile, just as you said, Francesca. We should not oppose AI and culture because our sector, the music industry, is a prime example of the fact that innovation and culture feed each other. And from the very beginning of our industry, we have benefited from innovation as much as we have fueled innovation. I would say that the French government took that position in particular to support one startup doing well within the AI sector that happens to be French, almost French, because Microsoft is in it. There was one in Germany too, so maybe you had the same difficulties because all the cultural industries were and are still united to prevent our government from taking positions that would disrupt our industries, while we have basically to build together a new market, and we have a lot of opportunities to do that. AI is already a big field of opportunities for creators as well as for distribution of music and other cultural content. For years, basically, in studios, we use AI as a tool. But with generative AI, there are new responsibilities to take into account to avoid this field of opportunity to become a field of ruin, basically. So yes, there's quite a frenzy of public consultation in France right now. First of all, and that was a positive thing, the Ministry of Culture has launched two important missions. One on the transparency and basically how to set up sufficiently detailed summary as provided for by the AI Act. So what it means, how do we lift the hood, if I may say so, to have a view of the data on which the AI models were trained, our content are being used. We have to check that in order to exercise our rights. The transparency is very important. The other mission is on remuneration for right holders. How could we set up economic models, new economic models with fair remuneration for right holders? Do you want to intervene?
Go ahead.
Okay. But well, basically, we have a lot of other consultation in other fields that are relevant to us. In particular, I'm thinking of the report from the authority, from the competition authority, also a public consultation from the authority in charge of protection of personal data. There's a lot of things happening right now, and we probably answered to something like 7 consultations from the beginning of September.
A lot of work, and again, touching upon all the issues that can be relevant to AI. The Germans want always to speak after the French. It's just we don't have a lot of time, so let's keep it short.
Very quickly. Just to add to this, and this, don't get me wrong, the AI Act has been a lot of work on EU level. It's been a lot of discussions and stuff, and it's also been on local level, a lot of discussions and stuff. Funny thing is, I've been in the business for some 20 odd years. Discussion is the same as before. Tech side versus culture and creative industries. Tech side always saying, oh no, but my business model won't work if I have to pay you some licenses. Surprise. We have exactly the same discussion now, only it's getting faster and faster and faster. And we have perhaps only one unicorn in Germany, that's Aleph Alpha, an AI company. By the way, it's licensing from Google. The transformer model is being licensed from Google because there is no European or authentic AI. So we have the same discussions. I think in Germany, we apart from our government falling apart, we're in a sort of sound discussion round on AI. They do know and do have recognized that culture and creative industry, like you said, is a driver for the whole economy. We are bigger altogether with film and games together and football and stuff. Bigger than chemical industry and bigger than the building industry. So we are someone to talk to.
And we produce fancier things.
Cooler things.
Certain, cooler. And yeah, by the way, I do always remind policymakers that technology players, they have this natural tendency at the beginning to free riding. The objective of the policymakers on Tabor is to just move them back to a virtuous way of operating, because this is convenient to everybody. Francesca?
If I can just add just one little piece of food for thought, you know, their business model, the technology company's business model, is that of providing a service, music as a service. So you buy this and you can use it, you know, in your own home, or if you want to go to San Siro and play in San Siro, I don't care. You paid for it. It's a service. We pay for, you know, by each time everyone listens. So this is a cultural clash that we have to try to understand and try to find the compromise between these two things. But the first thing is to actually sit down and talk to these people and understand. Because the longer we go on, the more difficult it is to actually settle this, and it will be too late.
Antonio, so Spain has not been the most vocal part of.
Fortunately.
Fortunately. You tell us fortunately. That's something that is interesting.
The problem you have is when the tech companies that are trying to develop systems without asking for license is the government. Is the case we are having now in Spain. Some clever person in our government has decided that we are going to compete against ChatGPT because Spanish is the language in the world, the language of pop, so we need to do something. So the government decided to start the process of creating their own artificial intelligence model language in good Spanish. Well, they create all the structure, they made agreements with Microsoft, and they forget the last point that the tech companies used to forget, the rights. And I said, because we have all the content, we have the content in the public library, the legal deposit, so we can use it because it's digitalized, with metadata, label it, good. The problem is that you don't have the right to use it. So sometimes that.
So we need to have the.
So this is why I say, fortunately, our government
beware
is
of
not
your friends. Beware of your friends. Exactly. So we have 30 seconds. Please conclude on the Italian side. I think you.
On the AI, no, I just said something that the positive side is that the Italian presidency of the G7 was really supportive of the position of the right holders, in particular copyright as a central and human-centric strategy on AI. The real point is now what is the AI Act and what the AI Act can do for us. I'm quite concerned about what I'm seeing in Brussels, in particular on this code. The draft code is really bad compared to what we expect, and I think we should turn this into something that is workable, because we all the time we see that we are saying all the time that we are embracing AI because AI is obviously a great opportunity, but the first era of AI will be a nightmare. So we will probably go beyond this, but this is a Napster era. We are entering in a new Napster era. Napster was when we were almost killed by piracy. The industry was almost killed by piracy. Then, as you know, we found business models. The tech companies found business models. They wanted to negotiate with us. The platform today, the big platform, don't want to negotiate with us. And that bring me to something that is more similar to the Sergio Leone, the good, the bad, and the ugly, where they discuss, but we need to keep the gun on the table when we discuss with them, because they are absolutely not interested in securing license at this stage, because they are so big, they are so involved in so many things, they don't want to negotiate just with the copyright industry for 1% of their business model. And that is the main problem. We should be clear with the institution, with the local institution, with the local government, that this is a fundamental part of the future of the cultural business. We all are countries where the local repertoire is so strong, where the local industry, the indie industry is so strong. We have artists that are famous around the globe, so on. But we need to keep an eye on the fact that they don't care about the copyright industry as a whole, and in particular for the music industry and the recording industry. So that need to be assessed before we are turning all this good business that we have seen, the numbers that we have seen, into a nightmare again. And so that is something that we should be absolutely pay attention on the fact that we are entering in a totally different situation, and will be impactful for us.
Enzo, as usual, you gave us the line, so let's keep the gun on the table. That's the next title for the next panel on AI. And thank you very much. Do we have time for a question from the public? No. There's a niet, clear, with the gun on the table. Thank you very much, everybody. That was an amazing discussion.